Okay, so today is gonna be a little bit more of just a little bit of a chat, I guess, in the sense of I don't really have focused thoughts as I tend to do with maybe the other ones. I think this is just all gonna be all about interviewing. I have a couple people in my life that are currently interviewing for different types of roles in different organizations. And this last go around, I had been very intentional about making sure that I ask hella good questions to make sure I can do like the best job that I can to ensure that I knew what I was entering, right? Because I feel like a lot of the time when we're interviewing, we're so desperate's the wrong word, but like we want a job, right? We're interviewing because we need a job, we want a job, we want to get paid, we want all of those things. So it's a stressful situation, and it feels more often than not in a lot of cases that the companies have the upper hand, right? And this time I went in thinking that this was going to be an even playing field, whether they wanted to or not. So like I wasn't going to succumb to, the pressure of like, I have to get a job this instant. So I'm going to be as amenable as possible. Like I'm going to like, of course I know my shit. I'm going to talk my shit in the sense that like, I will be honest and say the things that I've actually done and be honest about things I haven't done. But also like be really clear that I'm evaluating you as much as you are evaluating me. Because that's what it really should be. This needs to be like a two-way street so that you feel comfortable as a potential employee joining this organization and feeling like it's a place that you can not just succeed, but like thrive, right? Because to be honest, we spend too much of our fucking time, too much of our energy dealing and being at work. So like, why not make sure that this is the place that you can stay for a while? And that's worthy of your brilliance. I say that a lot but it's true, but it's really, really true. So I'm gonna try and share like maybe all of the questions or some of the questions that I've been using over the past couple, maybe not even the past couple, but this has been like the last time that I've interviewed. And I talked a little bit about some of the questions in the video and post around narcissistic boss, but like those were like specific to like see if you can identify a narcissistic boss. These are just kind of like questions in general. So I have questions around for the manager or the person that you're going to be reporting to and things like that. So questions like, how do you deal with conflict? Like what does honesty mean to you and how do you receive honest feedback? Because I have personally learned, and I think I wrote this addendum to the question is like how I kind of qualify it when I say these questions to people is that like I've learned in times of conflict that people say that they want honesty, but they don't really want it. So I really want to understand like what does that look like for you, and it may come off as an aggressive question, but it's like an actual real question because like I've legit been in situations of crisis and people are like I want honesty, and as soon as I give it, they want nothing to do with me, right? And so I want to make sure that like if you say that you want it all the time, because that's part of just who I am. That's part of my DNA, to be honest. This is an interesting one. When was the last time you used a company value to make a decision? And so I threw this in there because companies have these values that they talk about on the website, they talk about in interviews to make themselves feel good. But like, I really want to see, do you walk the walk? Do you walk your talk or not? Are you just bullshitting me by being like, we love authenticity and we love honesty and we are holding each other accountable, and you don't? Or we are customer obsessed and we are doing the good for the good of the planet, except that you don't. You know what I mean? Like, I really need to see, like, show me receipts. Like, tell me the last time you used a value to make a decision. And if you're all like, crickets, then you do with that what you will. What are the 2 or 3 examples of decisions you expect a person to make in this role autonomously? And so this is important for me because I like autonomy. I actually need it. I can't be micromanaged, particularly like where I am in leadership. Like if I have to get every decision approved, then you don't really want my leadership. Like you just want someone who's like to execute on your behalf, right? Like you just want someone to be an extra set of hands for you. It's not for me. So like to be really clear about like what's the level of autonomy do I have in this role? Where does that line look like for you? And if it's too low for me, then that's cool. It's just not a place for me. No hard feelings, right? What's the biggest risk or unknown that you would be taking on with me in this role? And so this is kind of like, I've been hearing more about this as I was interviewing other people that, and I think people use, in my experience, I got in this question, people then use the answer as a way to like immediately try and solve those, well, those whatever concerns are. And I would say don't, in my personal opinion. Just like understand what those concerns may be, but don't immediately be like, well, that's not a problem because I can do this and I can do that and I can do this and I can do that. Because like it's a lot. Like it's like every time someone's done this to me, I'm just like chill. Like again, you just gave me this question. I don't really know how I want to answer this question, but I'm gonna give you something, or I'm gonna say something in this moment. And now it just feels like you're trying to hard sell me, which is never a good feeling in any circumstance. When someone's trying to give you that hard sell, it's just like, it makes it feel like it's inauthentic, right? So like, but I do want to know as like a potential employee so that I can kind of judge and be like, okay, maybe this isn't coming across in this type of way, or maybe you weren't listening and when I explained X, Y, and Z, and then I would use that for further on interviews. I like to like, iterate a bit on how I'm communicating things, but like in my opinion, don't go in for the hard sell. It's just don't do it. For product people, which is hopefully, maybe some of you aren't. But in any case, I ask, what are things that you've recently said no to? Which is really, really important. Not just the things, not understanding what they want to do, but what they've explicitly said no to. That'll tell you a lot about like their decision-making process and things that they value, blah, blah, blah. Where do you see this company going? What's one of the recent hard decisions that you've had to make? How do you invest in professional and personal development for the team? Making sure that like the company, the manager views you all as people and not resources. And this is also an interesting one, the one I throw out here. How many vacations have you taken or plan to take this year? And if it's low, then ask why. So this is like if you have the extra time. This is not generally like one of the ones I like start out with, unless you want like a lowball one. And the reason I ask this is because the managers set the tone for what their employees can or can't do, right? Like there are some exceptions, right? Because I am one of those people that will take my vacation. But if I feel that I'm comfortable taking my vacation, or I have to feel that I'm still on when I'm on vacation, that's a problem. That if the company can't allow you to disconnect, like I feel like that's a toxic sign, in my opinion. So I just like to understand like when was the last time, and if you find that like this manager, particularly I had a CEO who was like on vacation every month, that was also like a little bit of a red flag to me. Not that they can't take vacation, but like at a very early stage startup, there's never a lack of work to do. And if you're constantly delegating it to everyone else and you're not doing shit, like it just having lived that experience makes me feel some type of way personally, right? Okay. If you're talking to the leaders, actually you can even talk this to ask these questions to your manager, but I've been a part of like the leadership teams in the last couple companies, so I ask these specific to understand how all the leadership team works together. Like how does the LT leadership team deal with conflict? How do they make decisions? How long does it usually take? Ding, ding, ding. Super important, because a lot of times, particularly in these early stage companies, everything is interdependent, right? Like product can't work independently. Engineering has to execute what product, designs or defines, right? Marketing has to be able to market what engineering puts out there. Customer service has to be able to support it. Like everything is interconnected and interdependent, right? So how long does it take to make a simple decision impacts so many things downstream. If it takes forever and you have to write, a rapid and then submit it to the LT to be reviewed, and then you have 2 weeks to review it, and then it takes a vote before, and shit's exhausting. Or is it like, oh, we just go with what the CEO wants regardless of like the research that needs to be done, or maybe it hadn't been done, you know what I mean? Is it someone's gut that's making the decisions? Is it data informed in any way, shape, or form? Is there a structure? Is it the person that, the boss likes the most? Like, how do you make decisions? How does the LT get input from others? So not just like amongst themselves, but like the rest of the company, right? And how does the LT identify and manage dependencies and risk? Ooh, girl, let me tell you. That question has, I think, saved me from a lot of like really tragic situations, and I didn't ask it earlier enough because again, my life has been in really early stage companies recently, and that is the toughest thing to do, is manage dependencies and risks. And a lot of times people just don't want to hear it. I don't know why. To me, and I understand that I'm different than maybe most people or whatever, but like, I feel like that's where the devil, like they say the devil's in the details, the devil's in like the dependencies and these risks. And if you're not able or comfortable enough to talk about them openly, plan against them, then like, I feel like you're just setting yourself up for failure. Like you're setting the entire company up for failure, right? Like I don't feel like it's appropriate to, to be scrambling at the end all the time for everything, have engineers work weekends, have marketing, all of a sudden have to come up with a campaign in 24 hours. Like none of that is fair. None of that signals good things for the company, in my opinion. So if you can't identify, talk about, plan for dependencies and risks, then again, that's, particularly if you're in the leadership team, that's a red flag for me. Some other ones around culture. What's one thing culture-wise that you're proud of? How transparent would you say your company is? And I think this is important for me because I've been burned by companies that like want to silo information and like hide the truth from folks. They only want to talk about the good stuff. Like it's almost want to brand it like, like Instagram transparency. They want to talk about the fancy things. We raised this much money. We have this amount of users, or we have this interest. We're on Forbes this week, and we're on like they just want to talk about the good stuff, but they don't want to be clear about the bad stuff. Like, oh, by the way, yeah, you may be in Forbes this week, but you also have like 2 months of runway, and therefore everyone's about to be out of a job. Like, that's a problem for me. But I have recently worked at some really great companies that are really, really transparent in ways that I just find like truly, 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 truly phenomenal. Like to the point of like why someone, was let go. Like, and there's even with that, there's like a certain level of like, well, we don't want to share too much because we want to be respectful of that person's privacy and things of that nature. But like the reality is that people are gonna talk, and they want to understand. There's like a sense of security knowing that like I'm not gonna be like, people who are let go for a reason, and it's not just because I felt this type of way in this month, or like it's a surprise. You know what I mean? Like, so one of the companies I'm thinking about, there was like, they kept it short and sweet, and they're like, so-and-so is no longer with the company. It wasn't a surprise for them. There had been conversations over a number of weeks and months, but there was this like, really egregious error that was made that we just couldn't come back from. So now we have parted ways and blah, blah, blah. And like, I feel like I appreciate that. There was like a reason, there was like a lead up to this. And that made me appreciate the leadership so much more because they were that transparent. And then same thing with like runway, understanding what the runway is, so that I, as an employee, that tells me that you care about me and give me the information to make my own decisions. And a lot of times I feel like that's when people will double down and work harder if they know that like we're in this together, like you're beside me, working really, really hard for the success of this company. Yeah. Anyway, transparency to me is a big deal. But then again, it aligns to like one of my really good personal values. Okay, the last couple questions I'll just kind of talk through. How do you handle accountability here? What's the current structure of the team? How do you anticipate the team evolving over the next 6 months? I think that's really good, particularly if like you're coming in as like in management of any kind. It'll kind of give you a sense of like what you may come up against. What am I saying? What you may come up against over the next couple months if you have to start hiring people, maybe let go people. I got hired into a role where they told me immediately that like you're gonna have to fire somebody, and I'm like, okay. And I should have questioned at that point, like, why were they waiting for me to be hired before they fired that person? Red flag. It just says red flag. How has the company addressed the upcoming recession or recent layoffs? So when this is taping at the beginning of 2023, lots of layoffs happening, and even these questions were happening in the summer of 2022. So this was before a lot of them happened, and the companies did actually give me some really good insight into like where they were, how stable they were, all the good things. And like take it with a grain of salt because like again, they're trying to spin this, but the more specifics they can give you, like I feel like the more that you can trust, you may be able to trust what they're saying. It's kind of similar to above, what's a recent thing that the company said no to product wise? What stage of company are you at? Do you feel like you found product market fit? So this was really important for me specifically. I had realized that after working with super early stage companies at my level, that there's actually an article. I wonder if I can find the article, I'll link it. But essentially says that you don't need a product manager until you've hit product market fit. Because until then, the founder is essentially the product person. And I found that to be 120% true. Essentially, like they just want you to be an extension of them. They don't want you to come with your own mind or your own opinions or your own strategy. Like they want you to execute what they want. And for me, that is not who I am, and that is not where I am in my career. And so I kind of took that as like, you know what? This article, you were spot on. You nailed it. You literally nailed and articulated what I had been feeling over the past couple companies. And so then I was looking for, at the start, to look for companies at a slightly bigger scale. Like I didn't want massive corporate just because I don't like bureaucracy. I still want to move fast. I still want to like feel like I'm making an impact, all those types of things. But like there's a different life at product market fit, which I think aligns to like my level and what I can do when given an opportunity. The next question is all about raising. Do you need to raise another round of funds in order to achieve your next set of goals in the next 1 to 3 years? What's the current runway? What's the biggest things driving the burn rate? A lot of times they're gonna say like salaries. Don't take that as an excuse. Act for the next big thing, right? Because yes, of course people are gonna be, salaries are gonna be the biggest thing. Also like figure out like, when you understand how big the company is, that also lets you know like, I won't say let you know, but like think about it in terms of where they are product wise or like what's out there, like customer wise and all that type of stuff. Because if they are essentially a team pre-product and they have 30 people, that's a fucking red flag. Unless they can justify having those 30 people. But in my experience, you can't. To me, that's a sign of like narcissistic behavior, like wasting money, like spending in the wrong places, and like having a big team for the sake of having a big team. Like it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense. What's the company's perspective on build versus buy? How does engineering and product work together? When sprint goals or timelines are missed, what usually happens next? And this is clearly linked to like the question around accountability that I mentioned before. But this question around like accountability or goals and timelines, like should be, I think, on everyone's list, because like when engineering, like the rate that engineers can like produce, you know, valuable value for our customers, which really impacts everyone in the company, right? If there, you know, are estimates or there's a roadmap or whatever the case that like other teams are building off of, and those timelines are pushed, it affects more than just the engineering team. It affects more than just the product team. Like it affects the entire company and what you can do and all those types of things. So I'm always curious to understand how companies deal with this, how they, you know, hold people accountable, but still treat them as humans, you know, that are fallible, that make mistakes. No one's perfect by any means. So yeah, understanding how they talk about it is always good. And also if they have like a sense of urgency, or do they plan, you know? Like I'm working in a company that is really interesting because like they don't really have a strong sense of urgency in the way that I've felt it in the past, and it's really weird, to be honest with you. And I have to like hold myself back a lot of times because like that's just how they are, that's what their culture is, and I'm just like, okay, I mean, this is kind of what I wanted though, right? I want the soft life, and so I'm just kind of trying to enjoy it, to be quite frank. Oh, and this last question I have could be given to anyone in the interview process, but I would ask a couple of different people, like, who are the last 3 people to leave the organization and why? Some people are gonna just leave because there's new opportunities, but depending on the stage of company that you're at, it's gonna be really telling why people left. Were all of them fired for poor performance? Did the people leave because they were having a tough time with their boss, with the product, with whatever? If the person answering like doesn't know, or they give you some like shady ass answers, then like that's also telling in and of itself, right? Of how much, how transparent people are, and if you can trust kind of what they're saying about the organization that you may potentially be joining. Anyway, I hope hope some of these questions were helpful. And you know, there's a lot of them there. I didn't usually ask all of them throughout the process, but I did highlight a couple of ones that I would try and ask pretty consistently. And I will say, I think I've gotten, none of this is perfect, but I think I've gotten a bit closer to like getting a really feel for what I might be entering, and if it's aligned to what I need in my next position, of what I want, of the type of organization that allows me to succeed, that values my perspective, all of those things. So that's important. It's not just like, yes, working on something cool and sexy is great, having impact is great, but if it doesn't hit like all 5 of my personal values, and I'm forcing myself in a great way to be I'm like holding myself accountable to what I say I want, right? And so I'm using my discernment really, really judiciously in that way, to find the right thing for me rather than just the next thing, if you know what I mean. Okay. All right. Well, I would also love to hear your like interview questions. I might make a part 2 and kind of crowdsource some interview questions from folks, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.